SAG-AFTRA brothers and sisters tonight. Okay, all right, good. Got some representation out here. Thank you for having me, even though you had no choice in the matter. I know what you've just been through. I put myself through this movie intentionally twice. It's an exhaustion, it's a journey, it's well, you know, because you just lived it. And so I want to begin tonight, before I bring our two panelists up, something very important that we have to do as we pay respects to both the dead and the living, as this movie did beautifully. We have a job here tonight because we have a critically important guest. I'm going to ask him to stand up, turn around, and face you as we offer our blessings and appreciation and respect to a survivor.
Whoa.
Wearing a blazer with the patch of his rugby team tonight, Gustavo Zerbino is here with us. Gustavo? Woo! About as emotional as I thought it might be. We wanted to retain a little bit of surprise, knowing he was going to be here with us. And so it is with great pleasure that I bring out, in no particular order, let's start with Numa. Enzo Vogrincic is here with us. Come on out. They say success has many fathers. This movie has one parent, and that's our director. You heard from him earlier tonight, Juan Antonio Bayona. And again, in thanking you all for being here, I was asked to do this. I'm not on the Netflix payroll, but I have to say, this film has become something of an absolute sensation. Emotional, gripping, yes, but a sensation at the same time. We're approaching 100 million households worldwide that have seen this movie on the Netflix platform, making it already the second highest performing non-English movie in Netflix history. This is something we just watched and witnessed together. And in large part, because of these two gentlemen, I am remiss in not introducing a man I just spent 2 hours sitting next to. Our interpreter this evening, please tell the audience your name.
Armando Hasman.
Thank you very much. And remember during our interview here that our two guests from the film are speaking, in some cases, their second, third, and fourth languages to deal with all of us English-speaking folks tonight. Juan Antonio, I'd like to begin with you. Because these are people from the trade, from the craft, tell them what they're aching to know, how long a shoot this was. I was astounded to learn it was all shot in sequence, which is just absolutely so rare now. Shooting locations, shooting challenges, how important it was to you to have an Uruguayan voice in this film, and this passion in your life for the last decade.
Well, this is a story that is so well known in the Spanish-speaking world, but also the whole world. There's many documentaries done. There's 2 movies already done. There was 2 movies already done, so we have to do it right. You know, we have to do it right. We spent the time. We wanted to shoot it in Spanish. There was no way to shoot this film in another language than Spanish with a Uruguayan accent, since it was based upon, for the first time, a book from a Uruguayan author, a Uruguayan voice with a Uruguayan actor. It took us 10 years to find the financing. Finally, Netflix when we were about to give up, show up and believe in the film, believe in the level of ambition we were looking for, and in Spanish again. Once we knew the film was going to be done, we spent, no, actually before we knew the film was going to be done, we did auditions for 9 months, looking for the actors. I saw 2,000 self-tapes, and from those self-tapes, I started to choose faces and started to meet actors online, because that was during the pandemic. And we finally got our cast. That was at the end of 2020. We did 2 months of rehearsals, which is a luxury, 7 weeks. Then all the cast met the real people they were portraying, or the families of the dead. And then we spent a very long shoot, 140 days, probably more. Which was extraordinary, because we created such a beautiful family. Everything that is in front of camera was real. The friendship, the love, the sense of camaraderie. And we were there with our cameras ready to capture that.
I asked you earlier a random question, but one that's important, who your continuity director was, because I know you've been recognized for makeup and hair. This was other level continuity.
Yes, also because I gave the actors a lot of space and freedom to improvise, because they were so well prepared. They spent 2 months doing rehearsals, met the survivors, read the book, so they had all the information, and then they work in similar conditions. With a context that was constantly stimulating the performance, you know. So there was a lot of space there to improvise. We shot 600 hours of material. That's the heroes of this film are the editors, because they had to deal
Aren't
with
they
that.
always?
So there was a lot of continuity issues that we had to deal with in the editorial.
All the DGA members nodding along. Enzo, I asked the director earlier tonight when we met, when it comes to the rehabilitation in the hospital, the showers, I saw the emaciated bodies, and being a 2024 film realist, I assumed it was all body doubles, except for recognizable faces that come along, and I realized your body weight went from 159 to 103 during the shooting of this movie. That was real. Tell me how important it was for you, for the living and the dead, to pay honor to your character.
Mucho de la escena de la película tiene que ver con la rehabilitación que sucedió en el hospital y la escena en las duchas. Y estaban los cuerpos realmente despojados de carne. Yo sé que la intención era ser realista y pensé que se habían utilizado dobles para representar eso, a excepción de que no se hizo eso y tú bajaste de peso de 159 kilos a 103 libras, perdón, a 103. Y esto para darle verosimilitud fue real. ¿Cuán importante para ti fue hacer eso de manera que honrara en memoria de los muertos y los sobrevivientes?
Hello, sorry for my answer in Spanish. Mientras rodábamos, para nosotros como actores, siempre nos pesaba que la historia era real, era una responsabilidad. Nosotros sabíamos que un día esta película la iban a ver las verdaderas personas que pasaron por esto y los familiares de los vivos y de los que no volvieron también.
While we were making the film, us as actors believed always and thought that we owed it to the people that survived, those that died, their families and relatives, to tell the story in the more real way possible.
Y esta idea es una idea que te ayudaba a seguir adelante, frente al frío, frente al hambre, que cada vez era más. Siempre recordar esto fue real, esto un día lo van a ver, era un motor. Y terminaba llevando la actuación a otro lugar, porque ya no solo es cargar con tu personaje, no solo es contar la historia, sino que saber que un día esa historia la van a ver las personas que lo vivieron.
Therefore, when we were feeling things such as hunger or cold, we were barely able to move. It was a way of replicating what they had gone through beyond our acting, because we knew that we had a responsibility to the people and to the character.
Y en este caso, como no era una cosa estética la bajada de peso, sino que es narrativa, es parte de la historia, de lo que les pasa, para nosotros era fundamental, entonces éramos capaces de hacer cualquier cosa por eso. Un ejemplo, después de rodar 12 horas, de estar comiendo poco, habíamos encontrado una manera de abrir el gimnasio de noche y poder seguir entrenando un rato más. Corríamos 40 minutos los que podíamos para seguir bajando de peso, porque lo importante era contar bien esta historia.
So this was not a typical shoot whatsoever, but it was part of the story. So fundamentally, we were willing to do whatever it took to get that realism in. So after putting in 12 hours of filming, and besides we were eating very little, we found that we could set up a gym afterwards. And at nighttime, those of us who run did. We were training, and we were able to keep on losing the weight.
Enzo, a follow-up question. How important was it to you that this project be delivered in an Uruguayan voice?
Y es fundamental porque esta historia ya se había contado antes, pero nunca con nuestra voz. Y algo clave de la historia, más allá que la historia termina siendo humana y no importa de dónde es, sin embargo hay algo de eso que sí importa, que son uruguayos, y algo de que nosotros entendemos un poco más de esa historia. Hay algo del lenguaje que era fundamental para contar mejor la historia, para que nosotros entendamos mejor a las verdaderas personas que pasaron por eso. Creo que es un puente menos o una barrera menos poder contarla en el idioma original.
This was something that was fundamental to us because the story had been told before, but it had not been told with our voice. And so I thought that was a key thing to do, because although there are shared experiences that are human to all, regardless of where they took place, this was a story lived or survived by Uruguayans. So we thought that that would be important for us to understand the story, to understand the tales of the survivors, and to be able to tell the story better. There were terms, there were feelings, and there were all those things that mattered because they had not been done before.
Juan Antonio, the scenes that involve faith, the notion of a higher power, permission from God, on the other hand, what kind of God would allow this, were directed with great care. Can you tell us how you approached that?
I always try to be as close as possible to the characters, to the reality, in order to be able to capture that with a sense of authenticity, a sense of place, of being there. And these guys were, most of them, very religious, and there's a lot of religious iconography. I like to think, to me, the film tries to be more spiritual than religious. I see them like orphans, abandoned in a place where life is not possible. Then they need to reinvent life. They need to somehow reconsider what is important and what is not as human beings. And by doing so, the movie becomes a mirror of ourselves. And they had to start everything from scratch. They were abandoned by the authorities, they were abandoned by their families, and they had to, it's for them it's a journey of self-discovery, and it's also a way of understanding that God was everywhere in order to survive. There was not a religious institution in the middle. The way when we mention about cannibalism, when we talk about cannibalism, that is a word that they don't like to use. I think what this film makes is a big change in terms of that it's not about taking, it's about giving. And giving yourself to the other ones. And suffer the same pain that the other ones are suffering. And by doing so, feeling empathy and understanding that you and the person across of you is the same thing. It's like when Gustavo told Roberto Canessa, you have the strongest legs. You need to work for us. There is an immediate realization that you and the other ones are the same. We are all the same. And to me that feels sacred, that feels something that feels spiritual, feels transcendent, you know, to understand that we are all part of the same thing. That resonates in the world we live in right now, especially with young people. You know, we live surrounded by so much conflict, and suddenly having this story that tells you that we are all part of the same thing, that we are all on board of the same plane, you know, and we need to come together and come along together to find a solution. You know? That was the spark that was all the time with us during the shoot. You know, we had such an important message that was our fuel, you know, to do this film.
Talk about, we tend to, those of us who've survived this film, this viewing experience, you come to the end and almost have to be reminded that the first part of the film, it starts with, of course, this violent plane crash. In looking into this airframe, this type of aircraft, 78 were built, 23 of them crashed. And they claimed over 500 lives, including a colleague of my father's in an upstate New York crash, Mohawk Airlines, which only people with gray or white hair will remember in this room, having gone to its reward years ago. These aircraft were flown in the continental United States, and they were flown overseas. I think there is one model still extant. Most of them went to the scrap heap, and deservedly so. You had to get all of that right, and society has changed since the dawn of this era. GPS today would mean the flight would land at its destination safely, one would hope. You had to get the technical details right. The formal report said it was pilot error. That is clear from your work. How challenging was that, starting with your visit to the crash site?
We had to know the context to make the audience understand what they went through, and by doing so, what they did. And we put so much effort in all details, you know, like talking about that type of plane. We went to the Uruguayan army. We had a conversation with them, very honest. They accept that it was a human error. It was actually a combination of a human error with they had some kind of like a very previous model of a GPS that failed that day. But they basically had to do this kind of turn because that kind of plane was not able to fly at 14,000 feet. So they had to go with this lower pass. And this lower pass, they had to do this kind of like U-turn that it takes 20 minutes to get from one side to the Andes to the other. But they turned to the right only when they were 6 minutes into it. So that's why it's considered to be a human error, because there's no way that the pilot didn't know that, because also the pilot did that journey many times, you know. But we really don't know what happened really in that cockpit. So I decided to leave the camera outside of the cockpit, out of respect for the pilots, you know. We knew that there was a machine that failed there, but anyway, something happened in that cabin. We decided, out of respect, not get into that space, and we stay with the other characters.
Enzo, will your life ever be quite the same after the experience of filming this movie?
Yo creo que ninguna vida vuelve a ser la misma después de ninguna experiencia. Eso primero, uno siempre cambia, uno siempre aprende y uno siempre está siendo diferente. Eso es lo bueno también. Uno siempre tiene la oportunidad de seguir cambiando. Sin duda que esto fue una de las experiencias más grandes de mi vida. no solo a nivel profesional, no solo por aprendizaje, sino también por meterme tanto y tan profundo en una historia que tiene tanta espiritualidad. Nosotros pasamos un año, 2 años hablando de la vida, de la muerte, de la amistad, del amor, de la familia, del estar lejos, estando lejos, haciendo amigos. Entonces, durante el rodaje me hice 25 amigos nuevos, por ejemplo. Entonces, muchas cosas cambiaron. Sin dudas, es imposible que esto no te cambie para siempre.
I think that is in life, anything you do changes you. I think that you're never the same after experiences that are formative. And of course I changed. I am different, and I like to take every opportunity to continue changing myself. But I think the biggest changes were at the professional level, and in terms of how much I learned. I had to go in depth into my character, and we spent 1 to 2 years with these people talking about life, death, friendship, love, family, making friends. I've made 25 new friends, and therefore I like to think that I did change.
And Juan Antonio, tell me about your immersion in your new extended family, the family of the living and the family of the dead.
Yeah, I sent an email to the survivors in 2011, and in that first email I already sent a couple of lines from Audiovisual's book, a line from Roberto Canessa that says, talking to the dead, he says, accept in peace that we have the chance to live the lives you didn't have the chance to live. So I was very struck about that conversation between the living and the dead, and that sense of depth towards the dead. So the more I got in contact with the survivors, the more I talk with them, the more I realized that they needed the film even more than me. They needed the film to be done even more than me. And my big question was what was left to be told after so many documentaries, books, and 2 movies. And then I realized now when I see the film with them, I realized that it was not about telling something that wasn't been told yet. It was more about giving them the chance to say thank you to those people who were so important. And it's kind of like, I see it almost like a poetic thing, the fact that the people who didn't make it, they gave everything they had for these people to be alive. And now they are using their testimony to bring these people back, to keep them alive again in the screen. And by doing so, I realized that they were comfortable with the story. So it was more about finding the chance of these guys saying thank you to these people, and capturing the mood and the feelings and the emotions and the context of what they went through, so people in the cinema will be able to understand what they did.
Also, I have to say that in the hands of another director, the debate over that, the debate over sheer survival, might not have been handled as beautifully as you did. There's a line in the script I wrote down as Enzo's voice says it, what was once unthinkable became routine. And there is a shot as the black and white photos are being taken, covering a human ribcage almost cavalierly to keep it out of the pictures. The pictures, of course, are still with us today, and they're on the web for people to see. You've managed to take on such a life and death topic and deal with it matter-of-factly, but with great respect and discretion.
I think that line, I'm so glad that you asked about that line, because that's life.
Yeah.
That's life. I mean, first you do what you think it was impossible, then you get used to it, and then there's a moment that you don't pay attention to it. And this is our lives. Our ordinary lives are about that, you know. And these people remind us how important is every single detail in our life, you know. I think that we are like kind of like, it doesn't matter if we are black or white, or if we are American or Spanish, we have one chance, which is the chance of living the life. But when you meet these guys, you meet people who had that chance twice. And that makes a big difference. And this is when you realize that sometimes we are like kind of like, ¿cómo se dice? Quejándose. Like quejándose, complaining, you know. You are complaining or you are not appreciating, you know, and you don't realize that you have a life, you know.
Enzo, be honest here, how cold did it get? And at what altitude was most of the filming taking place?
Fue difícil, es una historia difícil de contar. Siempre digo que parecería que no hay manera de contar la historia si no se pasa por un poco de dolor, y se pasó por dolor. Un rodaje muy conectado con lo real, con las sensaciones, con el cuerpo. Tener el cuerpo a disposición del personaje, bajando de peso, pasando frío, es llevar la actuación a otro nivel, donde ya no soltás el personaje, sino que tu cuerpo es parte de ese personaje.
Well, I have to admit,
This was it was hard to tell that story. This was a hard story to tell. And you feel that you have to go through the pain that you do in order to tell it well. The shooting was hard, obviously. It was hard because you had to connect with the pain and connect with your body with it. We had to lose weight, experience cold, and you have to do it, and the body becomes the story of the character, and the character resides within you.
Y por suerte existían todos estos elementos tan reales, porque te liberaban de tener que actuarlos. Al final trabajabas un poco menos porque eso ya estaba dado. Solamente te dedicabas a lo emocional y a lo complejo de la historia y a las relaciones. Y lo bueno de poner tu cuerpo a disposición es que empiezas a descubrir que hay otras cosas que son importantes, que hay algo de lo que uno cree que es dolor y sufrimiento, no es tan real ni tan importante. Hay algo a veces un poco más allá que empieza a ser lo importante, y uno es capaz de cualquier cosa con tal de poder ir hasta ahí.
Luckily, there were other experiences that were not so filled with pain. We were able to work less at certain things, still retaining the emotional tone of the story. The emotions did not take over necessarily when you had to suffer in your body, and there were other important components to it as well, in addition to the pain and the suffering. You were able to see that you had a duty to carry out, and that took you beyond the pain because you had to tell the story in a competent way.
Let me add one story.
You don't have to raise your hand near the door.
We, like, Enzo did such an extraordinary job, and he was so committed with the performance of Numa that when we finished the shoot, we had to go back to the Andes, because the first time we went, because of global climate change, there was barely snow. So we went 1 year. Once we finished the shoot, we went back there to shoot again all the backgrounds. And secretly, he was in Uruguay, and I called Enzo and I said, "What are you doing next Wednesday?" And he said, "Nothing." And I said, I want to take you to the actual place where the plane crashed. I don't have permission from the other producers, but I think I can manage to bring you here. How much is the ticket?" And he said, $400. And I said, "Well, we can pay for $400." And I can manage to talk with the insurance company and the people, the professional climbers, and we went to. So I secretly took Enzo, finally with the blessing of the other producers, just because he did so much. We had the shoot, but then we had the personal journey that was to do this film. And I really wanted Enzo to be there. And Enzo was able to shoot some shots that were very helpful for the film, because you can treat the audience by putting there and there a couple of shots of Enzo, in the Andes, but at the same time Enzo had like a close